welcome to the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook and this is a podcast celebrating everything to do within the world of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal or extreme metal. Hope you're all doing well and such. Coming up on this week's show, we're going to be looking at the new albums from Code Orange, the big one, Haggard Cat, death metal from Phalanx, but we will start with a band called Pyogenesis. They hail from Germany. This is their 8th album. Their sound, there's a lot that goes into their sound, which I will get to, I promise. It's just, I don't often get bands and artists on, I don't often talk about bands and artists on this podcast that have got much in the way of a backstory. A lot of what I cover on here is very new, very modern, and a lot of newer bands that have only been around for a few years or just a couple of albums. So to get an idea of, first of all, it's nice to go back and have a look at Pyogenesis, how they end up getting here. But the sound that makes up their new album, which I don't know if I mentioned it, it's called A Silent Soul Screams Loud. To get an idea of the sound they're using or they're doing, you kind of do have to go through their back catalogue a little bit. So they began life in 1991 in the ashes of a death metal band called, I think it's called Inhuman Touch. Whatever it was, came from an OG death metal band. They formed Pyogenesis initially as a death metal band. And very, very quickly after they formed, they started incorporating more doom elements. They became a death doom sort of thing. But before their debut album came out, they went into a gothic metal tone, which they would end up becoming one of the early pioneers of the genre at large. So, yeah, they started off this big, dramatic gothic metal proprietor of the genre. At 1998's Mono, or Will It Ever Be the... I'll try again, it's a difficult word. Mono, or Will It Ever Be the Way It Used to Be, they started incorporating more punk rock into their sound and eventually became a bit more of a gothic punk sort of deal. Flicking through little bits, I've kind of got an idea of an early or a lower production AFI sort of thing. From that, they eventually, on 2002's She Makes Me Wish I Had a Gun, that is just a mad blend of goth, of punk, and of pop rock. And a few years after that, in 2005, Pyogenesis would break up, and they wouldn't reform until 2014, from which, at that point onwards, they have just been a maddening hodgepodge of all the genres that they've ever touched on, ever. So this is album number 3 since they've returned. It's kind of like a steampunk trilogy that they've been working on. It's their first album with a brand new guitarist called Thilo Schmidt. And yeah, so you have a song like Mother Bohemia, which is track number 2, that opens with a big blast beat kind of rhythm. Little dabbles of the growl vocals here and there, both in Mother Bohemia and Will Ever Be the Same. You've got a lot of the punk rock the pop punk sort of stuff coming in through not High Old Times. High Old Times is a weird hard rock, borderline glam rock, glam metal kind of thing. A lot of the punk was actually in Will I Ever Be the Same as well, I think. But the biggest takeaway I got was a lot of the goth is still in there. A lot of that comes from the vocalist, Flo Schwartz, who's been the band leader and the sole concurrent member throughout their inception. He has just one of the biggest, most impactful vocals. He can hit, some of the notes he hits aren't horrendously high or aren't horrendously low, but just the power he hits them, and there's never a judder. First take I did of this recording, I couldn't say Mother Bohemia without wobbling up on the throat. He nails some of these high high energy notes with just ease. If you go to I Can't Breathe, the prologue, the tail end of that is just him hitting like powerful note after powerful note after powerful note. On the back is like twinkling ambience in the background. So yeah, I think a large part of what brought me into this album, what kept like hooking me every time I like had it on the background or a lot of spare time, so I'm always listening to music at the moment, so just whenever it's on, the thing that always like, caught my ear was always his like, well, again, just his vocals, his not so much the lyrics, but literally just the notes he can hit and how he sounds. It's hard to describe, but yeah, I think a lot of the like gothiness that is still retained in the band's sound largely comes from him. Undoubtedly though, this is a very pop metal kind of record. It's weird enough, it still retains a like quite dirty, distorted kind of guitar sound. And for me, I've spent a while trying to pinpoint it. It's kind of like that midpoint between when it becomes like a classic thrash or classic death metal album on like borderline with like an old black metal sort of sound. And the two bands I sort of compared it to like Dark Throne or Necromanthean. That sort of like really not tinny but not exactly high produced kind of tone. And yeah, they use that kind of like quite evil sounding guitar tone to make some like the most pop and like bombastic kind of guitar licks and like song moments that you can think of. I compared them in my head a lot to Avenged Sevenfold in the way that they could get those massive massive vocal hooks to work with a very dramatic sounding heavy metal. And yeah, I really, really enjoy this purely because it's easy, it's quite cheesy sounding music, because it has got an essence of glam to it. The song High Old Times, yeah, that's just ridiculously borderline camp. It is like the hard rock, glam rock kind of thing, like borderlines on the words like AC/DC and that kind of thing. And yeah, I found I kind of not pity them, but because they started life as a death metal, death doom sort of outfit, they are registered on Encyclopedia Metallum, which is a great resource for finding anything like metal. The only problem with it is the core people who run it and use it are very elitist. So unfortunately on there, all their albums are they're bomb because they're not uber tear out your eyes death metal anymore. They experimented and liked the experiment and went along with them instead. So it's a weird one. So it's hard to find like a gauge on how each album has reflect them. But looking at other reviews for A Silent Soul Screamed Loud, fuck me, that's hard. A lot of people are picking up on the case of it is just in your face, very almost like arena rock with grittier guitars. I do find it's quite weird that they end with a 14-minute prog influenced song called The Capital. Feels a little bit out of place, I won't lie. And it is very much, to me it feels kind of like my first prog song, when you've got the like high energy alt rock start, a very idyllic, acoustic, folky sort of middle, and then another big rock ending. You could have split them into 3 songs and I think it would have fit the overall scope of the album a lot better. But again, they're not, from the research that I've been looking into Pyogenesis, they're not a band who want to do things how someone else said. It was just like, well, let's try this. If it works, we'll carry on. If not, we'll fuck off and do something else. So yeah, big cheesy, big Very digestible, very fun. I don't even know what genre to put it under because there's just so much going on. We'll just call it pop metal, and I usually hate that term, but it is what it is. It's called A Silent Soul Screams Loud. So too many S's for my liking. And it's by a band called Pyogenesis. It's out now, and yeah, good clean fun. Good clean fun. I just spat over it. That's disgusting. Moving on then to a debut EP from a band called Phalanx, Phalanx. It's called Golden Horde. They are a very, very gritty death metal band from Los Angeles. Lyrically specialised in like European and Asian history, but their biggest calling card for me was the fact they have a 3-pronged vocal attack. You've got lead vocalist Kia, don't know why I'm struggling with this, Kia Chira Gilchrist, that's why I'm struggling. He does a lot of like the high-end shriek sort of things, and for all intents and purposes, he is pretty much the lead vocalist. I've seen like some videos and footage, and he is central point, and you can hear it as well in the music that there's more shrieks that happen than the other vocals, which you get to. You've got Josh Townsend, who is the bassist, also does more of a like punk rock kind of grunt. And the comparison I made is Phil Anselmo on Superjoint Ritual. That sort of like kind of snarly sort of shout, as it were. And then on guitars you've got what's his name? Because I only wrote down half it because I'm a great lad. So his name is Sean Glaze. He is an absolute beautiful unit of a human. And I call him beautiful because his handle or his moniker on the lineup to Golden Horde, again on the Cyclopedia Metallum, is Lord Spew, and I think that's fucking wonderful. He's a guitarist, and he also deals with like the low end, proper guttural death metal kind of vocal. And yeah, so they are the 3 ways that the band vocally attacks their songs. And they bounce between them pretty regularly, and I think the mix that they have in that 3-pronged attack, they have done a very good job of it, because it's easy. Like, you look at a lot of the like deathcore bands that came out in the 2000s, and the way they were trying to like smash these high like black metal shrieks with like this low gutturals. And you'd have the bands that made it work, and they were the ones that carried on. So bands like Suicide Silence, Job for a Cowboy, what's the band that Eddie Hamidi used to be in? So All Shall Perish. And then you had the ones that we don't talk about anymore, which just did not do it right. They just wanted to smash so many things happening at once. But the way they sort of like intertwine these 3 vocals together, they've done it super well. I've seen like little videos and little snippets of what they're doing as well, and they work quite flawlessly in a live setting on like actually listening to it. And I keep punching my microphone. In essence, they are, like I said, so you've got Jira, who is like front and center. He's often the lead in a vocal, and then he gets backed up by the grunts of Josh, and then just underneath, just like bellowing guttural from Lord Spew, as I will give him his proper moniker. And then yeah, oftentimes I like switch it up, and then it still seems A, befitting of the band, B, working well together as a unit. And yeah, I got quite intrigued that finding it, and that was like their major point that they put into a lot of the bio, was that it was a 3-pronged death metal attack. And yeah, it was something that could have easily been done really, really shit, but I think they've done a cracking job of it. Musically, I find that it touches a lot of different genres. So it edges on. It's very much a death metal kind of album, but it just edges on the world of like brutal death metal. There's a lot of time change that makes you think sometimes it goes a little bit techie. There's quite a lot of crust because of Kira and Josh's vocals. But yeah, it still retains a very through and through death metal kind of sound. And one final thing I'll say for it is the production on this album is fucking mint. I've said before that I am a big fan of extreme metal bands, or extreme metal albums, excuse me, with high levels of production and very crisp production, making it sound very modern. I'm never really a big fan of like this lo-fi, old school way of doing extreme metal. But this ticks all the boxes for me. It is, as much as you can't understand, will you lot fuck off, this is meant to be a lockdown! As much as you cannot understand a word they say because they're just screaming bloody murder in your head. And they haven't got it on Metallum, but I'd love to read the lyrics, especially if they are very history-based kind of lyrics. You can identify like who's singing, the part that's being played, how they're intertwining with the music, the fucking riffs that Mr. Lord Spew will throw out there. I don't think there's much else to say apart from the fact that Phalanx is a very interesting and very encouraging blend of, or attack proponent of death metal. The EP is only 16 minutes long, and yeah, I kind of got a lot of vibes of Job for a Cowboy, as if they were fronted by Mitch Lucker, only if somehow they split Mitch and his vocal patterns three ways. Yeah, I think one for the future in Phalanx, and definitely something to be excited by for the future of death metal, especially if they do like a very revised, or continue, sorry, their very high production variant of death metal. So, yeah, one to look for, definitely want to give it, go in on if you are a big fan of death metal. They're called Phalanx, Phalanx, and the EP is called Golden Horde. Where's my mouse gone? There we go. Moving on then to Haggard Cat, the former Heck side project, and is now the main deal for frontman Matt Reynolds and drummer Tom Marsh. They hails from Nottingham. This is their second proper studio album, and they do a very heavy punk kind of sound, is how I describe them, although I don't think that does their sound enough justice. Having said that, I'm a bit of a hypocrite when it comes to Haggard Cat. Because they are a rock duo, I initially just kind of disregarded them. I threw them into the same boat as a band like Royal Blood or the Black Keys, and I don't like either of those bands, so I was just going like, they're going to do their thing over there. They're like a weird, like a pocket of alternative music fans really go ham on Royal Blood and Black Keys. I just looks like another one of those kind of bands. Definitely not. I think it's fair to say I listened to European Hardware and I fell in love with that song. It is a fantastic cracker of a song. And based on that, I kind of got really excited and kind of hyped for the album, which would become Common Sense Holiday. And if I'm honest, again, a lot of that excitement got dampened on the first listen. I listened to it on speakers on my phone, which probably aren't the best. And yeah, it just didn't sit with me the same way it was sitting with a lot of people, and like the hype that the album was getting. I initially just didn't see. I got European Hardware still. It's still a fantastic song, but everything else just sort of like blended into one, and I just wasn't feeling it. It really blew up for me with listening to it on headphones. Getting it on headphones, which is a weird thing to say for an album like this. Certain albums you can kind of understand, listen to it on headphones and like taking it all in. Like a lot of post music albums, I find a lot of electronica, a lot of prog, anything that Devin Townsend's ever done ever. Having like a quite a rock and roll, heavy punk kind of thing, less so. So yeah, having it listened to it on headphones warmed so much, in my opinion. I got way more into it. There's songs like Human Animal, which hit just as hard as European Hardware, Rational, which is completely away from everything else that the album does. it's like the quote-unquote ballad of the album, and I fucking adore that song. It's a softer, more melodic side. It plays with tempos, it plays with tunings, and yeah, I just think it's a fantastic song. Like I said as well, Human Animal, got loads of rock and roll in there, kind of like a Hazy, Reuben. I was getting on, and I found myself like saying, "Oh, it's," and I saw another review compared bits of it to Pulled Apart by Horses, which I thought, fucking yes, great shout. I think it was the Natives and or Threads that I was listening to. I think this reminds me of Hawkeyes. I finally got to a point where the album kind of reminds me, or strikes me as like a best of British kind of album. You've got the best parts of Pulled Apart by Horses, best parts of Hawkeyes, best parts of Reuben, and yeah, all that coming together just made for a much more enjoyable kind of thing for what I was getting at the start. And like I said, I don't know what it was that was picking me away from listening to it. It ends up being a high energy, really, really proper rock and roll, summer vibes kind of album, which is annoying considering it's so beautiful outside and we can't go outside, which is sad. And yeah, it's got all the power of hardcore punk with alternative rock, songwriting, and from that it results in party riffs, huge crowd choruses, which when we do go back outside and start doing shows again, they are going to just, I was going to say bomb, like whatever the hip, cool expression, which is the complete opposite end of bomb, so excel, but that sounds too nerdy. They're going to do fantastically well in a crowd environment. And with the success that I've seen of bands like Royal Blood and Black Keys, which do tap into like a stonery sort of vibe every now and again, much in the same way as every now and again, I think this does go kind of stonery, but just instead of from an indie world, it comes from a hardcore punk kind of world. I can see this maybe having a bit of crossover potential, and then yeah, just having more eyes on a band like Haggard Cat, because after what happened with Heck for some reason resonates amongst alternative music fans as just the one that got away. There's been a lot of bands over the years who have come and gone, and we've been like, man, I wish they were the next best thing. Or for me, it's always been the Defiled. But University, it seems like everyone's just, as soon as Heck gets mentioned, everyone just gets really sad because, man, we wasted them, didn't we? They deserve better. So yeah, whatever your idea of success is, I hope Haggard Cat can get it. Like I said, this album transformed for me after some headphone listens. I think maybe having on headphones, because there's so much going on just in that one stream of guitar, and just trying to pick up all the variables on that, I'm not quite sure. But like I said, songs like European Hardware, Human Animal, Time, Rationale, The Natives, makes for a jolly good album, and yeah, fun for the whole family. It is Common Sense Holiday. It's by the band Haggard Cat. It's out now, beautifully British. Go support things. Final album of the week, and it's the album. It's the one that everyone's been talking about. And if you haven't heard about it so far, where have you been? It is the fourth album from Pittsburgh hardcore collective Code Orange. It is called Underneath. Of course, it is the follow-up to Forever, the album in which Code Orange kind of broke the world. They were in trying to get my thoughts together. They were a unit that did very aggressive, very in-your-face hardcore, and that borderline on beatdown hardcore. And from that, they then brought in more industrial stuff and made it an industrial, metalcore, hardcore, whatever you want to call it, kind of album. And somehow, in that collective of music, they broke mainstream attention bigger than 90% of... I can't think of another hardcore album that ever hit the mainstream much in the same way as Forever. They got Grammy nominations and ended up going to the award ceremony themselves. They had billboards thrown up all across California during that time that shows off, look at this new album from Code Orange. They got the rub from WWE, which they've done music for Bray Wyatt as The Fiend. They've also appeared 1 or 2 times live and performing music. They had mass mainstream attention from not like the alternative world, so like your Metal Hammers, your Kerrangs, your Rock Sounds ish, and then all your like the Radio One's sort of world were also getting in on this because they saw that this album was just breaking everything. And yeah, for a few years the music world was dominated by Forever, by Code Orange. And inevitably you had to worry about what was going to come next, because there's been a lot of albums that follow on from the big one that never quite measure up. A lot of people say about Unto the Locust, and as much as I do enjoy that album, it's never going to be quite the same as Blackening. People shit on 21st Century Breakdown. Again, I quite like it, but it's not quite American Idiot. And same way people feel about Insomniac as well after Dookie. It takes like a very special kind of band to really follow up the big one with another big one. I'm just trying to think, Metallica and Justice for All is a very, very popular album now, but I seem to think that I've read somewhere that when it initially came out, it was very looked down upon because it was such a difference from Master of Puppets, but I'm not 100% sure on that. It's been a while since I've probably got in the lore of Metallica, but I'm sure someone somewhere knows better than I do. Flicking the album on and you get into that mess of sound of Deeper Than Before that breaks into Swallowing the Rubber Hole, and all those like worries or fears about how they're going to follow up just completely go. And it ends up being like, it shows refinement, it shows evolutions to their industrial hardcore sound, and it is at that point where you realise that there is nothing to worry about when it comes to Code Orange, because apparently Code Orange are fucking immortal when it comes to this kind of sound, which I'm not going to say it's unique, because there's bound to be another band somewhere that I've never heard of that also does industrial hardcore. I think I've listened to industrial hardcore before, but no one has touched it the same way Code Orange have. They like trip hop and like industrial lends itself so well. How they use it works so well with the hardcore they're also putting on top of it. That stop-start like songwriting that they do, it completely baffles me. And I don't know how they do it on a live setting. I've never got a chance to see them live, but they are creating a huge mystique about them as well. It's uncanny what they're doing, and it is just searingly brilliant, and it fucking really is. They better themselves at every single thing they've done that they got praised for on Forever. They better their versions of like a cutthroat brutality on, like, you listen to songs like You and You Alone, Back Inside the Glass, In Fear. They are visceral, they are intense, they are just brutally heavy. The gothic metal influences that we're touching on Forever, they've bettered them. So basically what Bleeding in the Blur walked, so that songs like Soulful Surrounding, which is an absolute fucking stunning song, Soulful Surrounding, Autumn and Carbine, and Who I Am could run. Those songs, with a lot of it is like Reba on lead vocal duties, and she does an absolutely incredible job. There are times where it does feel like they're stepping into the world of like a typo negative kind of thing. I love how they've like sequelized the song The Only what was it used to be called? Oh, it was The Only Way. Yeah, they sequelized The Only Way. That was a song that came out as a standalone single for Adult Swim a couple of years ago. Great song. They sequelized it, or sequeled it, whatever the proper term is, for The Only Way, and then The Only Way is a fucking cracking song. The two ends of the spectrum of like intense brutal hardcore and doomy gloomy gothic metal, they smash those worlds together for songs like the title track The Easy Way and A Sliver. It is everything anyone would want from A Code Orange album, B the follow-up to Forever. I think a lot of people have been already waxing lyrical about saying it's up there for like album of the decade and album of the year. Saying album of the year, I can kind of see the prospect. Well, no, I can kind of see. I can see the prospect and where they're coming from with that sort of thing, because as a whole, it's going to take something incredible to have the kind of diversity and have the kind of creativity to outmatch Code Orange. And that's not even including, like, you think 10 years, that's at least another, at the rate they're going, another 2 or 3 albums, maybe 4 if they're extra bubbly. But in terms of what's like projected for this year so far, I know there's been a lot of talk of Trivium, Every Time I Die, and there was another one which I can't remember off the top of my head, but as much as I do enjoy Trivium and Every Time I Die, I don't think either of them can hold a candle to what Code Orange are doing. I think this is a very, very, very pristinely excellent album, and it is unfortunately nothing different to what anyone else has said before, because everyone's going absolutely bananas apart from Pitchfork, but Pitchfork can suck my cock. But yeah, I think if you haven't already heard of or at least listened to Code Orange, I think you're missing out on something truly brilliant. I don't think albums or bands like this happen very often. And when you've got talk of people saying like who's going to like lead the next generation of metal, what's going to happen when your Iron Maidens, your Judas Priests, your Metallicas finally sail off into the sunset, I think you're going to have bands like Code Orange take up that mantle and like carry on into the next generation, the next generation after that, next generation after that. Very, very good things. Very, very good things indeed. And that will see us through for next week. These were very, very disjointed and very jittery reviews. I do apologise for albums by Pyogenesis, Phalanx, Haggard Cat and Code Orange. Next time you hear from me, you should hopefully hear some reviews for Leech, which I was meant to cover this week, but I didn't. Svart Crown, Crossed, Kvelertag and Ishan. I've left myself a lot to do. And it's very, very punky next week. Jesus Christ. My ears are going to bleed. So, enjoy yourselves. Have fun. Do good things. Stay inside. That's pretty much it. See you later.